Another year, another Metroidvania, though Kotama and Academy Citadel, to its credit, has some interesting, newish ideas. Winning the adoration of your classmates, a unique combat system that often leaves enemies covered in purple goop, and anime girls with massive sweater puppies. Okay, that last one's not all that unique, but the point stands. This indie release, coming to us from 2P Games and Atomstring, is hoping to stand out a bit from the crowd while offering a familiar formula which appeals to traditional fans of the genre. But does Kotama and Academy Citadel pass the test? Or does it completely flunk? Well, let's find out in our full review. But real quick, support real people that make real things over at patreon.com/idreamofindiegames, where your new indie gaming community is waiting for you. School is in session in Kotama and Academy Citadel, a game that puts you in control of a young exchange student named Kotama, who finds herself swept into a strange student popularity competition at her new institution, Carmel Academy Citadel. She's tasked with taking down any rivals that stand in her way on a quest to become the ultimate Carmel star. Prepare for hours of anime tropes, poor writing, with some of the translation not even completely finished at the time of this review, and airhead characters that have about as much personality as a cardboard box. It's dull, pointless, and silly, and I'm confident nobody will be talking about this narrative come the end of the year because, well, I barely even want to talk about it now. It's dumb. But of course, a goofy plot can be forgiven if a game is ultimately fun to play, but in this regard, Kotama and Academy Citadel feels comparable to a half-inflated pool toy. The game stays afloat with decent combat, solid map design, and a fairly nice soundtrack, but is also held back by some frustrating platforming sections, bland visuals, and a bare-bones upgrade system that countless games have done better. At its heart, Kotama and Academy Citadel is first and foremost a Metroidvania game. Players will need to explore a massive map through an interconnected world, gain abilities such as dash and wall jump to progress further, backtrack through the same areas multiple times, and master abilities while discovering the occasional secret or two. It all feels as routine as when I wake up, scratch my balls, and brush my teeth in the morning, but with a few unique twists. The first of those relates to a substance known as luminite, which not only acts as currency, but can also be used to heal your lead character's chrono shell, which is really just a fancy way of saying life bar. If your chrono shell sustains enough damage to hit 0 and you take one more hit, well then, you're dead. So rather than traditional potions, the B button, should you be using an Xbox controller, can be held down to try and restore the shield so that you can once again sustain a few hits, and I do mean a few. This is an interesting healing system that can be a bit frustrating to engage with, as oftentimes you need to heal in the midst of a fierce encounter, and the game's enemy patterns ensure that you won't be able to do that as comfortably as you would like. I died an exhausting amount of times trying to perform the simple act of healing because of how long it takes to succeed. Another odd mechanic is that as you traverse through new rooms, you lose temporal coils, which control the flow of time to some degree. These coils dictate changes in the environment, and a set amount can also be required at times in order to open certain doors. It's pretty obnoxious to lose one coil each new room, though more can be earned and applied to your total count through gameplay. This system can also lead to confusion, as certain characters will only say certain things should you have coils available. Changing the timeline is a neat idea in theory, but here it is poorly executed, resulting in a mechanic that feels completely unnecessary, one that exists for the sake of trying something a bit out of left field rather than meaningfully affecting the game's outcome. Combat in Kotama and Academy Citadel is serviceable. You have a basic combo, the ability to parry enemies if you can get the timing down, and you can eventually learn new attacks which are performed by holding down the bumper and executing a command. The secondary abilities tend to drain luminite, and so I often found myself not even bothering with them, relying on basic attacks. One twist I did enjoy about the combat, however, is enemies slowly being covered in purple goop the more you bash away at them. Once they're soaked entirely, you can execute your secondary attack to dish out maximum damage and gain back some of your shell. This is referred to as the detonation system, and it's fun at times, though many of the game's enemies, such as an annoying flying book in the library section, are downright infuriating, stealing much of the joy. Mixing up the combat a bit more are different weapons which can be earned. Your main umbrella will accompany you the first 3 to 4 hours of the game, but inevitably other weapons become available, such as a whip. All of these weapons have abilities that can be upgraded, meaning that Kotama does learn a few different types of combos, which is appreciated. All told, the combat has some neat ideas held back by irritating enemies and bosses. Platforming sections certainly leave much to be desired too. Mechanically, Kotama doesn't feel awful to control, but she is often the victim of questionable design choices. Take for example the game defaulting to the analog stick for movement rather than the D-pad. I hate when games force analog movement without the option to do anything about it. Many rooms require precision jumps and timing that Kotama and Academy Citadel wasn't really built for, meaning that you should expect plenty of spike deaths and missed platforms throughout each session. Even worse, some sections require a combination of sliding, dashing, double jumping, and even mixing in an attack or two if you hope to traverse across the screen successfully. A precision platformer this is not, even if the game would like you to believe that it is at times. It's a shame because there's some cool touches here, like needing to use your umbrella to carefully float through treacherous situations. On the positive side, I thought the game handled fast travel pretty well. Players will eventually unlock a train to get from location to location, which also fills out with more passengers as you progress. A few of these passengers will allow you to equip new perks and upgrades, making the train feel like a hub area where you can rest your weary bones. The map of Kotama and Academy Citadel is well designed too, labeled with key items of interest and always pointing you in the right direction. It's worth noting that you do need to discover a new area's map for yourself before it's fully unlocked. A handy save system is also effective, as there are rewind stations scattered about, as well as permanent checkpoints. Upon death, you can choose to go back to the nearest checkpoint or the nearest rewind point, though going back to a checkpoint results in losing all progress you'd made up to that point. Similar to a Souls game, you can also retrieve some of what you dropped wherever you die. The system isn't terrible and at least alleviates some of the backtracking this genre can be known for. As you can see, Kotama and Academy Citadel has plenty of weird stuff going on. Some of it works and a great deal of it doesn't. I haven't even touched on the whole winning the admiration of your students system, which has you retrieving items to gain status points. This mix of time travel, sort of, and Metroidvania gameplay, while ambitious, just never quite comes together to create a cohesive experience. As far as difficulty is concerned, players will initially have options. There's a story mode, recommended mode, which is how I played, challenge for more challenge, and an unlockable fourth difficulty if you truly hate yourself. Unfortunately, the difficulty cannot be changed in-game, which is annoying because I ran into quite a few difficulty spikes. Hell, some of the game's basic enemies can even damn near one-shot you. The balancing isn't perfect, so the option to switch difficulties in a future update would be appreciated. Other options include basic video and resolution tweaks, volume controls, and not much else of note. The game mostly runs without issue on PC, with just a few random, non-game-breaking bugs encountered through my time spent playing. And on the subject of time, players should expect maybe around 15 to 20 hours if they seek out 100% map completion. This of course depends on many factors, including skill level and familiarity with the genre. On Steam Deck, I sadly could not get the game to boot, so hopefully that's just a pre-launch issue. Visually, I didn't find Kotama and Academy Citadel very impressive, with an appearance similar to an early PS3 game if I were to be kind. The anime art isn't the most inspired I've seen, with your usual cast of cute girls with massive breasts, dull enemies, and bland backdrops that feel completely uninspired. From boring libraries to gray corridors, you've seen it all before, and better. Animations are also a bit lacking in spots, especially when pushing objects where the developer couldn't even be bothered to program an animation for that specific action. The game cuts visual corners without question. Fair, given its likely smaller budget, but still, in 2026, you expect a little bit more. Even the giant, bouncy portrait art of characters didn't do much for me. But I will credit the sound team, who have put together a solid mix of tracks, including some lovely piano-driven tunes that feel like they should have been in a better, more meaningful game. Sound effects are also pretty decent, whether it be bashing foes with special abilities, or all the cool mechanical-sounding things in the backdrop. This is a good effort in terms of sound design. I credit Kotama and Academy Citadel for taking risks. Hell, we need risk takers in gaming. Unfortunately, many of those risks just don't pay off. This strange mix of time travel, student admiration, purple goopy combat, and anime tropes, in the end, wasn't for me. There are some things to like, whether it be the solid map system, a decent upgrade system, soundtrack, detonation mechanic, or thoughtfully designed fast travel system, but they are consistently overshadowed by bigger issues, like bland visuals, lackluster animations, clunky platforming sections, awkward difficulty spikes, and a really bland story. The result is a Metroidvania game that isn't offensively bad, it's just painfully mediocre. I feel like a few more months of development and more planning around its concepts could have done the game well, but as it stands, I think anyone other than extremely hardcore fans of the genre will bounce off of it rather quickly. class dismissed. At I Dream of Indie Games, we do believe games are so much more than a number. That's why we have our Genie Lamp tier system. You want to avoid that dreaded indie Krampus at all costs, but we go all the way up to the elusive Golden Genie Lamp of Approval. And in the case of Kotama and Academy Citadel, I'm going to award this one the Table Lamp of Mediocrity.